Let's take a look at our lineup today here on The Now. And with more states legalizing marijuana, there's a new push to get a breathalyzer to test for it. The progress one company's making to get this on our roads. And dogs and cats and shelters could be getting a special recognition in more states. The impact that naming them an official state pet can have. And kids are always asking for new toys, but let's face it, they can lose interest in those pretty quickly. How you can check out toys just like a library book instead.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Amanda Starantino, and you're watching The Now Indy. A Washington Township mom is looking for answers tonight after she says ongoing transportation issues have created scary moments for parents and led to her son being late to school. RTV6's Megan Sanctorum explains what the issues with the school bus are and how the district is responding.
They waited. It's not fair to the kids. And waited. It's worrisome for a school bus this mom feared wasn't coming. 10-15 minutes, you can expect that. But this morning, she was over an hour late.
She says the bus was so behind schedule, her son missed part of the school day.
So she left this bus stop along Fall Creek Parkway and ended up driving her 9-year-old to school. But she realizes other parents may not be able to do that. That's the whole comfort of the transportation is you don't have to find your kid a way to school or drop them off. The bus is supposed to come get them. She says it's especially tough this time of year. These are little bitty kids. It's cold outside. Something needs to be done. She tells us this is not the first time the bus has been late in the morning, and she says it's been behind schedule after school as well, creating scary moments for parents waiting to pick their kids up from this stop. We're out here freaking out. What's going on? Where are the kids at? Like thinking it's an accident or something. She tells us after RTV6 got involved, the transportation director called her and told her he would look into the problem and work to resolve it. I just want to know that the bus is going to come when it's supposed to come. It's going to drop my son off. And if there's anything, that I'll be notified. That's all. Working for you, Megan Sanctorum, RTV6.
And the district has a bus tracking app listed on their website. It's unclear if that is functioning properly. We tried calling and emailing district leaders throughout the day for more information about this case. They have not yet gotten back to us. Kyle, still those cloudy, gloomy skies out there.
Yeah, still locked into the cloud cover, but some brighter days are not very far away. In fact, we're going to see those as we head into the upcoming weekend. But we have the clouds. This morning, we had some snow from those clouds in parts of the area. Like this was a view out my back door. You can see a coating of some of the snow, but that all melted away as temperatures recovered. Not everybody saw the snow, though. Here's a look at the radar over the last 12 hours, and you can see it was mainly over the southeastern portion of the state. Few snow showers around Lafayette as well, but now we just have the cloudy skies. Looking back to the northwest, this is the next system kind of waiting in the wings here. I don't think we're going to see as much precipitation, but as we go into tomorrow morning, a little bit of a wintry mix coming our way to start off the weekend. Temperature-wise, made it close to 40 in Indianapolis, 39 for the high. It's 37 right now in Columbus, and you're in the upper 30s around Bloomington and Bedford as well. Lower 40s in Greencastle and Terre Haute. This evening, our temperatures are going to hold fairly steady here. We're going to keep that blanket of cloud cover, and the winds are fairly light. They stay calm with those cloudy skies. We've got temperatures of 35 by 10 o'clock tonight. Going into the upcoming weekend, it's a little bit of a split one for us. On Saturday, we start off again with that morning mix, but by the afternoon, really not bad. Temperatures recovering to highs into the lower 40s, and as we go into Sunday, that's where we're going to see the return of some sunshine and warmer temperatures. We start to surge into the 50s, and there is more where that came from. We'll take a closer look at your weekend and beyond in a few minutes. Chris?
Today, American and Delta Airlines say they are temporarily suspending all U.S. flights to and from China as the coronavirus continues to spread. Also new today, U.S. health leaders have ordered all 195 Americans who were evacuated from China to a military base in California be quarantined for 2 weeks. Maya Rodriguez is looking into how prepared our medical facilities are for a variety of health threats here in the U.S.
Inside this hospital is a potential front line in the fight against dangerous infectious diseases.
very intense. It's very high-level stress.
Elena Tirador is a nurse at Denver Health Medical Center and part of the team here that could treat everything from Ebola to coronavirus.
You know, we have trained and trained and trained, so everything we do is to prepare for these patients.
This week, as they do every 6 weeks, they underwent training drills, preparing for the possibility of a patient who may be infected with something unusual and contagious.
It's challenging to actually care for a patient when you're wearing the whole personal protective equipment.
There are 10 medical facilities like this in the U.S.
This outbreak has the potential to become a national security threat to the U.S. It's certainly a national security threat to China right now.
Dr. Eric Toner is with the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, which provides research and analysis for the CDC and the World Health Organization. He says there is concern about the coronavirus here.
It is clear that the Chinese are not going to be able to contain it, but certainly we need to be thinking about the possibility that this will become a pandemic. Now, the question is how severe a pandemic.
If that happens, containment units like this one may not be able to do much.
It does make sense to keep that person isolated until we know more or until they're proven no longer to be contagious. If, however, this becomes widespread and instead of having 5 cases, we have thousands of cases, no, we don't have that capacity.
Back at Denver Health, preparing for anything infectious is a 24/7 operation.
The world's watching
For a potential global threat. I'm Maya Rodriguez reporting.
Maya, thank you. Let's get back to our lineup here on The Now with some new evidence showing the danger that marijuana is added to our roads. Now, that's putting new urgency on getting a breathalyzer to test for THC. We're hearing from one company working on this to see just how close it is to becoming a reality.
Single day.
Leanne, Republican of Alaska,
Mr. Paul.
sticking with her leadership.
No. Mr. Perdue. No. Mr. Peters. Aye. Mr. Portman. No. Mr. Reed. Aye. Mr. Risch. No. Mr. Roberts. No. Mr. Romney. Aye. Ms. Rosen.
Mitt Romney, Republican of Utah, the strongest advocate
Mr.
on the
Rounds.
Republican side, calling for witnesses.
No. Mr. Rubio. No. Mr. Sanders. Aye. Mr. Sass. No. Mr. Schatz. Aye. Mr. Schumer. Aye. Mr. Scott of Florida. No. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. No. Mrs. Shaheen. Aye. Mr. Shelby. No. Ms. Sinema. Aye. Ms.
Kirsten
Smith.
Sinema of Arizona, Democrat who had also
Aye. Ms. Stabenow.
been considering voting no on witnesses, but she voted with the
Mr.
party.
Sullivan. No. Mr. Tester. Aye. Mr. Thune. No. Mr. Tillis. No. Mr. Toomey. No. Mr. Udall. Aye. Mr. Van Hollen. Aye. Mr. Warner. Aye. Ms. Warren. Aye. Mr. Whitehouse. Aye. Mr. Wicker. No. Mr. Wyden. Aye. Mr. Young. No. Mr. Blumenthal. Aye.
It appears the roll call is complete. One thing we saw there, which you don't normally see in the Senate, all the senators seated, rising only to vote. Normally when they vote on average days, they just mill around, walk up to the desk, say yay or nay. Much more formal in the Senate trial.
Are there any senators in the chamber wishing to change his or her vote? If not, the yeas are 49, the nays are 51.
As expected, the Democratic motion to allow witnesses has been defeated. Close vote, 51 to 49, 49 to 51. Two Republicans voting along with the Democrats, but that was it. Mitch McConnell was able to hold his party in line in defense of the president on this key question of witnesses. The Senate is now going to go into recess. I want to go to our senior congressional correspondent, Mary Bruce, for more on that. We knew since the beginning of the day that this vote would go down, that the Democrats' attempts to get witnesses, despite a new revelation from John Bolton today, had not succeeded. What we don't know yet is the end game for this trial, which is why they've just gone into recess. Again, a dispute over how many more days to take. Will they finish tonight, tomorrow, into next week?
Yeah, and George, there has been a flurry of activity and negotiations here. In fact, we saw that playing out actually on the Senate floor right before this vote. You could see the Republican leader, the Democratic leader, many of their top staff and aides huddling, I suspect discussing exactly that question of what comes next. How does this play out? How do they get between this point and that ultimate final vote on the articles of impeachment? So here's essentially where things stand, and this is very in flux, but Republicans, many of them, they want to move quickly here. They are done with this process. They want to get it over with. But they also don't love the look of having a vote to acquit the president in the wee hours of the morning if they were to go ahead and do this and plow through tonight. Democrats are urging to slow this down. They want to have their members who have now had to sit silently through all of this to have a moment to stand and speak publicly, to go on the record and be able to say, for the record of history, essentially, where they stand on this process and on the president's actions. I suspect also that some of those Republicans who have had concerns about this, those holdouts that we have been watching, those two Senate Republicans who just voted to oppose this, Mitt Romney and Susan Collins, they may also like to go on the record. Perhaps maybe some of the president's defenders as well. We know that right now they are going to recess. They don't have a solution, that is clear. They're now all going to huddle and try and come up with some kind of plan. But George, there's a lot of politics at play and also the political calendar to take into account because, of course, you have the Iowa caucuses on Monday and the president set to deliver the State of the Union here on Tuesday.
So many cross pressures. I want to bring in John Carl on that, our chief White House correspondent. And John, I think that's the big goal for the president, to have this done before he goes into the House chamber on Tuesday night. But there's also been some talk that the president's attorneys, perhaps in the wake of some of these revelations over the last couple of days, want a little more time to prepare their closing arguments.
There's certainly some talk of that, and George, frankly, I don't see how they get this done before the President's State of the Union address on Tuesday. If you just consider the calendar here, and you look at what happened in 1999, the last impeachment trial of a president, each senator was given 15 minutes for the speech about their vote. If you do the math on that, you get to 25 hours worth of speeches, enough to chew up at least a couple of days and probably past a Tuesday. And we don't even know when we're going to get to that point, because Democrats can still put further motions forward beyond this initial motion about witnesses. There are still other motions that could be in order.
Okay, John, thanks. We've got the first response now from the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, coming out of the chamber after the vote. Let's listen in.
Okay, I'm going to make a brief statement. Okay. To not allow a witness, a document, no witnesses, no documents in an impeachment trial is a perfidy. It's a grand tragedy, one of the worst tragedies that the Senate has ever overcome. America will remember this day, unfortunately, where the Senate did not live up to its responsibilities, where the Senate turned away from truth and went along with a sham trial. If the president is acquitted with no witnesses, no documents, the acquittal will have no value, because Americans will know that this trial was not a real trial. It had no witnesses, no documents. It is a tragedy on a very large scale. I will be now going up to my caucus to discuss what we're doing next. I will not
Democrat
talk
leader Chuck
about
Schumer right there calling this a sham trial, not a fair trial, a tragedy for the American people. I want to bring in our legal panel for more on this right now. I think Chuck Schumer would agree with Lisa Murkowski, one of the Republicans who ended up voting no on witnesses, on one thing, that this is not a fair trial in the Senate. But what you heard from both Lisa Murkowski and Lamar Alexander, who voted no, one of the senators in play, was a lot of blame on the House because they didn't do their job. They did it in a wholly partisan way, and then it's not the Senate's job to make up for that.
Right. But Chuck Schumer is right that whatever happened in the House, this will be the first impeachment trial of an American president with no witnesses at all. In fact, the first impeachment trial in general, even of any federal official. And so, so he is correct about that. What I think he is also saying, sort of on a deeper level, is this will be an acquittal, but it's not an exoneration because there wasn't sufficient examination of the facts and the evidence to get to a principled result.
It reminds me of the Mueller report, who did not exonerate the president. The president went out the next day and said he was exonerated, and perhaps some evidence that the president is not exonerated, if that's true, is the statement of Lamar Alexander, Dan Abrams, where he said he believes what the president did is inappropriate, simply not impeachable. And at least some senators in the afternoon, like Ben Sass of Nebraska, had said he speaks for us.
Yeah, and we're going to have to see how many senators. We sort of talked about this before. It's almost a pseudo-censure. This idea that some of these senators are going to come out, make a comment that they think that what the president was accused of actually happened, but that shouldn't mean impeachment and removal from office. And that's a distinction from he did nothing wrong. But let's be clear about what just happened. The vote we just saw is effectively the end of this impeachment proceeding. The last hope that the Democrats had was, as happens in a trial, you get a witness and you never know what happens next.
As we learned this week, even though the witness wasn't called.
Correct, correct. That has now been shut off. So now, even if there is another revelation, even if in the next day or two some other big scoop comes out about the president did this and that on Ukraine and etc., there aren't going to be any witnesses called. It's over. It's now just about the process and how to end this process, both politically and for history.
Well, this trial is over. There was never much of a chance that you were going to get 20 Republicans to vote to convict anyway. But Terry Moran, the battle that's only just begun is what is the meaning of this impeachment.
And that battle is going to be fought on the campaign trail. President Trump will have his full exoneration. This is a travesty and the Democrats are wrong. The Democrats will have their answer. And John Bolton, and more evidence perhaps coming out of the Southern District of New York and other places, might have a weight on the scale as well. But then, what's the meaning down through the years, right? Every one of our impeachments has come to stand for something. The impeachment of Andrew Johnson, which failed, stood for the principle for a long time: we don't impeach presidents for policy disagreements with Congress, which is at the root of that impeachment. The impeachment of Bill Clinton: we don't impeach presidents for personal misconduct that doesn't impact their public duties. What will this one stand for? President Trump's, that the president can do things like this and there's nothing wrong with it? Or something along what Lamar Alexander has suggested, that impeachment is such a high bar, removal from office, you can have a kind of a censure that it was inappropriate but not warranting the death penalty.
And one of the things that makes this impeachment unique is the fact that it's happening during an election year with the president running and John Carl. That means that in some way the verdict is going to be delivered by the voters, not only in November, but perhaps for history as well.
Absolutely, and this was actually a point that was made repeatedly by the president's defense, saying, look, we've got, at one point, one of his lawyers said we've got the election in a few months. Well, it's a little more than a few months, but we're headed towards an election and the ultimate verdict to be delivered by the voters themselves. The Democrats said, though, is this is a president that has showed his willingness to cheat, to seek foreign help, to try to fix that election or try to affect that election. That's why you need to remove him now, but we're clearly at the point where the verdict will ultimately be delivered by the voters.
Pierre Thomas, our senior justice correspondent, I want to pick up on that point right now, because that was one of the arguments the Democrats made, is that the president is picking up Russian propaganda, was looking to cheat in the campaign, and we know right now that there have been instances of the Russians trying again. We know that they were looking at Burisma, which of course was the gas company in play through most of this Senate trial, and the warnings have come from Robert Mueller, from the head of the FBI, that this election is under threat.
Exactly, George. When I spoke with the FBI director in December, he warned the fact that the Russians were still up to it and that they would be trying to do it for the upcoming election. And as you said, Bob Mueller said that they're doing it yesterday, they're doing it today, and they'll be doing it in the days preceding the election. So this idea that foreign governments may play a role in our election is one that people are very concerned. People are raising the issue of Iran, also China, George. So we're going to have to see how all this plays out. And again, as you mentioned, and Terry mentioned, the Southern District, we have to see how that plays out in terms of Giuliani's associates, Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman. What will the Southern District find in connection with their investigation of why that U.S. ambassador was removed from her post?
Thank you, Pierre. I want to bring in Barbara Comstock, former Republican member of Congress, also played a key role during the Clinton impeachment trial. And let's talk a little bit about how Republicans handled it. It seemed that the argument that carried the day for a lot of these Republican senators who are facing re-election in November was we've got to get out of here. That if one witness is called, 10 witnesses are going to be called, the Senate will be in a trial for weeks and months, and you don't want that in an election year.
Well, right, and we also knew from the beginning you were never going to get 20 Republican senators to join the Democrats to convict the president. And I do think that Lamar Alexander, Marco Rubio said it very well when they said, we already know what we know. You know, I think they believe John Bolton, you know, if they have to choose on these. But let's let the American people decide.
Well, let me stop you right there because that is the argument. And I think you're right that it's going to pick up some currency in the Senate. Such a different argument than we saw from Republicans in the House, who are far more in lockstep with the president on the idea that there was nothing to see here. He didn't do anything wrong. The call was perfect.
Well, the Republicans in the House, there are very few seats where they're in sort of a purple area or a blue area. So they're, you know, they've sorted themselves in the House already where you're either in a pretty red district or a pretty blue district. And when you talk to the members, they are not hearing a lot from their constituents upset that there aren't witnesses or there aren't people. Certainly the polls show, yes, people would like to hear more information, but they aren't banging on the doors. I think that's the same for the senators. So this has to be decided out by the public. And the problem that the Democrats have, I do think, honestly, is they have a weak bench here. And if Bernie Sanders, you know, wins the Iowa caucus and, you know, the New Hampshire primary, it is going to be a very bizarre season, and there'll be a lot more problems, you know, that people are going to be looking at other than what happened here. They may forget about this quickly when they're talking about, you know, socialism and all the, you know, Medicare for all and all the, you know, paying for college and all those issues. This could be long forgotten.
What a political calendar we are facing right now. The Senate trial, the Iowa caucuses on Monday night, the State of the Union on Tuesday, and Mary Bruce, we really don't know when this trial is going to end.
George, one senator just told us point blank, nobody here has any idea. They are now right above us, huddling, trying to come up with some sort of solution. Either they work through the night or they come back and try and sort this out sometime early next week. If I'm really trying to read the tea leaves, the Republican leader Mitch McConnell just put out a statement where he did note that they are working right now to come up with some solution to conclude this at some point in the coming days.
In the coming days. On that note of uncertainty, we're going to sign off for now. Return to your regular programming. Full report tonight on World News Tonight with David Muir. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Let's take you to Bloomington on this Friday evening, and this is one of the areas where you had a coating of snow earlier today, but all of that has melted. Just didn't see any sunshine. That's going to change, though, as we go into Sunday. Temperature-wise, not too bad here for late January. We've got numbers in the upper 30s. You're close to 40 in Bloomington. It's 36 in Marion, Indiana. And tonight, those temperatures, because of the blanket of clouds and a very light wind, we're only going to fall back to around 34 degrees. More clouds, no surprise there as we go into your Saturday morning. Now, one weather system is going to be sneaking in here, bringing in a few snow showers, flurries, especially northwest of Indy here, and maybe a little bit of a wintry mix. But I think it's going to be even lighter than what we had this morning, even into the afternoon. Tomorrow may see some of that pesky drizzle that hangs around for a little bit, but temperatures are still going to make their way, most areas, into the 40s here. 42 Saturday afternoon in Greenwood and Bloomington, upper 30s for you around Muncie, Kokomo at 38. Sunday, that's where everything changes for the better. The sunshine returns, and look at those temperatures. We're going to see those numbers quickly get into the 40s and eventually into the middle 50s. Now, it will be a little breezy on Sunday as we have those southwest winds. Could have some gusts throughout the day on Sunday that are around 30 miles per hour. A little breezy, but some sunshine, warmer temperatures. We'll take it. It's much better than having a chilly wind. Next few days of your forecast, we've got that warming trend. We're into the middle and upper 50s on Monday. Dry there as well. Rain chances returning on Tuesday and 54 degrees. Thanks for joining us this evening. The news at 6 o'clock starts right now.